Throughout the past few weeks, it has been common knowledge that the Italian heavy tanks are due to arrive to World of Tanks here in 2021. The end of 2020 once again brought back the infamous loot boxes, and within these loot boxes we found the vanguard of the Italian heavy tanks' arrival to World of Tanks, the Bisonte C45. The Bisonte is a tier 8 premium heavy tank with a new auto reloading system, somewhat different yet very similar to the reloading systems that we've seen already on the Progettos and the Panteras and the Standard B in game. Furthermore, with its sleek and modern looking design, the Bisonte looks like it could be a contender to be the tier 8 equivalent of the T95 FV4201 Chieftain. So let's take a look at how this tank holds up in skirmishes, shall we? There are many content creators who have already done reviews on the Bisonte, and they've gone into detail about the differences of the Bisonte from other auto-loading tanks and auto-reloading tanks in game. So if you want to find out more about the tank in terms of that, feel free to go check out their reviews. The Bisonte's main armament is a 105mm cannon with an improved auto-reloading system. The gun has 3 shots in a fully loaded clip. However, while playing skirmishes, you really want to avoid emptying out the clip too often because it can create issues in mid to late game situations. You want to avoid going too deep into the clip at the start of the game because you may not reload in time when the enemies decide to push in and in mid-range engagements where the Bisonte likes to shine. More on that later. Emptying out your clip before getting into mid-range and close-range engagements can be game-changing because you end up drastically reducing the DPM of the tank and the clip potential of the tank. You want to avoid being stuck with 1.8 to 1.9k DPM, and you want to be able to use that clip potential and that burst potential when the enemies decide to push in, so it's best to hold off on that trigger. Emptying out your clip towards mid game is probably your best bet. If you do it during late game, you end up making it a struggle to shut down enemies quickly and effectively. However, when the opportunities do present themselves to clip out completely and then retreat and reload completely for the 40 seconds it takes to reload the entire clip, you should definitely take the opportunity because clipping out can completely change the tide of the game because it drastically changes the hit point advantage into your favor. This comes down to the burst potential of the Bisonte and its ability to reduce the enemy's hit points almost instantly. The Bisonte can shut down enemy tanks very quickly when you use the reloading system to your advantage. You can put in 1 or 2 shots at start, let the clip reload, and then completely clip out to finish a target off completely from full health. And this can be a game changer because sometimes in certain situations it will negate the need to actually focus your fire at tier 8 skirmishes and clan wars. The ability to switch between an auto reloader style or an auto loading style and a single shot style is very useful in tier 8 skirmishes, and it allows for a very dynamic gameplay that not many other tanks have allowed in tier 8 skirmishes. The only other tank that really comes close is the IS-38 and the Progetto/Pantera, and we know that these 3 tanks have been meta changing when it comes to the clan wars and skirmish tactics in the past few years. So let's see how the Bisonte affects the upcoming clan wars seasons. While in random battles, the Bisonte definitely struggles to penetrate enemy tanks with its standard AP round, and this comes down to the fact that it comes up against tier 9 and tier 10 tanks. However, in skirmishes where you're only gonna come up against tier 8 tanks, the AP rounds can really do a lot of damage, and only certain individual tanks such as the Liberté, the Defender, and a couple of other heavies, and some tank destroyers such as the T-20 prototype will require you to switch to heat rounds for the extra penetration. However, when you do run into 252Us and Libertés and other tanks with a lot of armor, it doesn't hurt to have a couple of heat rounds loaded because 270mm of penetration is going to make light work of their armor very quickly. Just keep in mind while switching from AP to heat or heat back to AP that you do have an entire clip to reload. You don't really want to be caught out with only 1 or 2 shells in the magazine because that's going to drastically once again reduce your DPM, and it's going to be a tough fight to get out of. Reload management is definitely the key to understanding how to use this tank effectively. If you know when and why to switch shell types from heat to AP, then you're bound to have good games in this tank and you're bound to have an easy time in skirmishes. However, those of you who struggle to understand reload management and understand the time it takes for this tank to reload and the time it takes for it to re-engage with the enemy and disengage from the enemy are going to struggle to do well because you're going to be finding yourself caught out without any shells in the magazine or only 1 or 2 shells in the magazine, and you won't be able to fight off the enemy or hold them back long enough for teammates to come support you. The final aspect of the gun that we're going to be talking about, or about the firepower that we're going to be talking about, is the dispersion and aim times. Now these are probably the worst part about this tank. With a 100% crew and no equipment, you have 0.4 dispersion at 100 meters and a 2.59 second aim time. This is atrocious for a heavy like the Bisonte and is probably the biggest drawback and the most off-putting thing about this tank, especially when you consider that the closest tier 8 counterpart to the Bisonte is the Renegade, which has much better gun handling. The Bisonte is definitely a very frustrating tank to play with at mid to long range engagements due to the gun handling, and almost impossible for the average or below average players to use effectively at long range. In randoms, the Bisonte's armor is horrendous. It gets overmatched and penetrated by many tier 9s and 10s to the point where trying to block shots almost feels impossible and pointless. However, while playing tier 8 skirmishes, you don't come across as many high caliber tanks and you're only exposed to tier 8s. This makes the armor of the Bisonte slightly more tolerable as there are less high caliber guns that you have to worry about. This tank with its sleek profile reminds many people of the Chieftain, and therefore it comes as no surprise that the main aspect that we're looking at when it comes to the armor of the Bisonte is the turret armor. The hull isn't very effective at blocking shots. You will get lucky in some situations, but it's very unlikely. However, I have heard many complaints from people that the turret isn't as good as it looks like it would be, and it does get penetrated by other tier 8s regularly while playing hull down. My only advice to people who struggle with the turret armor of the Bisonte is try to play on higher ground from the enemy and try to prop the front end of your tank up slightly so that they're shooting up into your turret, because this will hide the upper part of the turret armor, which is not protected as well as the rest of the turret. Also, try not to sit still in front of the enemy for too long and look directly at them, because you will find that sometimes you get pinned in the turret cheeks. Keep moving back and forwards, wiggle your turret, and disengage whenever you're on reload or whenever you're not planning on shooting the enemy. I think the main problem comes down to people expecting the Bisonte to be overpowered like the Chieftain. However, the Bisonte isn't as powerful as the Chieftain, and it isn't as impactful as a Chieftain, especially not for a tier 8. So if you have high expectations for this tank, you're gonna have those expectations crushed relatively quickly. However, this doesn't mean that the Bisonte is absolutely terrible. The Bisonte, in my opinion, has 3 main hallmarks. Firstly, the improved auto reloading mechanism. Secondly, the turret armor, and finally, the mobility. The Bisonte is arguably one of the best heavies when it comes to a good balance between mobility and armor. There are a few other heavies that go faster than the Bisonte and leave it in the dust, like the 5100 and the FCM 50T. However, amongst all the similar meta hull down heavies like the Carnarvon AX, the Carnarvon, the Renegade, the T26E5 and Patriot, and the E75 TS, the Bisonte can actually hold its own when it comes to mobility. The only 2 heavies that really put any sort of distance between themselves and the Bisonte is the E75 TS and the Renegade. This allows for some interesting plays, as the Bisonte can now make rotations that other heavies like the Patriot and the Carnarvon can't actually pull off, and only the E75 TS and Renegade can. However, with the lack of the cupola weak spot that the Renegade has and the lack of the eyeball weak spots that the E75 TS has on either side of the guns, the Bisonte can actually play hull down positions better than these 2 tanks in some situations, and also rotate out just as quickly. The Bisonte also has some of the best traverse speed amongst all the hull down heavies, as well as one of the highest specific powers. Now, while it is a very heavy tank and it is extremely slow off the start, due to its higher specific power, it can actually keep up with most of its tier 8 hull down counterparts, and it will eventually catch up to some other tanks that will pull ahead. So when it comes to the Bisonte's crew and equipment, the first thing you want to do really is get a decent crew with brothers in arms, snapshot, clutch braking, off-road driving, situational awareness, and of course, 6th sense. While some of you may feel inclined to add a turbocharger to the Bisonte, you will very quickly find that it makes very little difference to this 48-ton tank, and that you are better off trying to improve the gun handling of the tank with the remaining 2 equipment slots. After testing several different loadout builds in training rooms and in randoms and in skirmishes, we found that vertical stabilizers, improved ventilations, improved aiming, and improved rotation mechanism are probably the best options you have, and I found the combination of ventilations, vertical stabilizers, and improved rotation mechanism to be the best combination. While this loadout definitely adds a bit more weight to the tank and reduces the specific power slightly, these changes are very negligible in comparison to the increase to traverse speed that is gained by the tank. Furthermore, while running improved aiming instead of vertical stabilizers or improved rotation mechanism, you do reduce the dispersion at 100 meters down to 0.36. However, as the vertical stabilizers and improved rotation mechanism both reduce dispersion during movement and they stack, you end up with minus 30% dispersion during hull and turret movement, which definitely pays off in the Bisonte, which very rarely finds itself sitting completely still and stationary. This loadout in my experience is probably one of the best loadouts for the Bisonte, but of course that's all a matter of opinion, so if you do find something that works better for you, feel free to leave it down in the comment section below so others can benefit as well. While the Bisonte is definitely a very powerful tank at tier 8, its effectiveness is limited to close and medium range because it can't really fight the long range engagements with the terrible dispersion that it has. It is for this reason that I wouldn't risk running more than 4 Bisontes in a lineup, and that's me being generous. Realistically, I'd want to run 2 or 3 with 1 or 2 Renegades. I honestly believe the Renegade and the Bisonte go hand in hand and complement each other very well. The Renegade can cover for the Bisonte's lack of long range engagement capabilities, and the Bisonte can also take a lot of hits that a Renegade wouldn't be able to. Furthermore, the clip potential of the Bisonte definitely helps the Renegades out when they get stuck into long-term engagements with defenders and other heavies that are going to be a pain to deal with. Because of the amount of burst that you can put out instantly, you can neutralize these tanks very quickly and prevent them from doing too much damage to your Renegades. You want to be taking positions that allow you to engage the enemy at mid to close range combat, depending on the situation. If you're at mid range, you can afford to clip out. If you're at close range, you want to avoid it unless you're doing it to cut down tanks quickly. By clipping out at mid range, you can fall back and retreat and reload completely without having to worry about the enemy popping up right in front of you, whereas in close range you can end up in a situation where you've got a 40-second reload on hand for a full clip and the enemies decide to push you and you can't run away. There are several key positions that come to mind off the top of my head: the ridgeline in the south of Live Oaks, the ridges to the south of Sand River, and lastly, the hill in the north of El Haluf. There are several other positions on other maps, but these are probably the most common ones that come to my mind straight off the start. These positions allow for quick aggressive plays where you can shut down half the enemy team very quickly and then relocate to engage the other part of the enemy team, something I expect the Bisonte will be very capable of due to its high mobility. This also gives you a perfect opportunity to completely clip out towards the end of an engagement in one position and then relocate to a different position while you're on full reload, allowing you to meet the enemy with a fully loaded clip. My final thoughts on the Bisonte are honestly the low DPM of the tank is a huge drawback and the gun handling is a huge drawback. It makes it very frustrating to play at certain situations. However, it's balanced out with moderate to good burst potential and also very good mobility. I think the tank is very well balanced. It has a good amount of weak spots that people can exploit, but it also has a lot of strengths, and if you know how to use the strengths, as with any tank, it can feel like it's overpowered. However, you will find that this tank is a lot harder to play well for the average player, and the better players among us are definitely going to perform much better than the average or below average players. With that being said, guys, again, this is all completely subjective. Let me know what you think of the Bisonte down in the comments section down below. How do you like it for tier 8 skirmishes? Have you tried it? Have you fought against them? And do you find them just as frustrating to deal with as I do when they're held down? Let me know what you think in the comment section down below, guys. Don't forget to leave a comment. Don't forget to like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you disliked it. Once again, don't forget to join all our communities. We have a Facebook group, we have a Discord channel, we also have a Twitter page. Feel free to check all of those. Links will be down in the description below. Also, do not forget, we stream every Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays at 8 PM UK time. Link will once again be in the description down below. I'll see you all in the next video. Take care. Happy New Year's, everyone. Peace out.
True. You wait a while. Also, is this tank... Boys? How is the church... What? Okay. It's like, wait, what? He's so bamboozled. Wait, is he gonna try it? Is he gonna try it? I can't make it. It's too funny. There we go. There's a KV-1S. He is so good. You can't do it, buddy. Oh, he made it. He made it. He made it.